The flyer was taped to the inside window of a gas station off Highway 43, creased, stained, and barely legible. Now hiring, overnight security guard. Midwood Hollow Zoo. Live-in position, $1,800 per month plus meals. No experience required. Must not be afraid of animals or long hours alone. Apply in person before dusk. Vinnie Jenkins squinted at it under the flickering light of the convenience store sign, his tired reflection staring back at him in the glass. He'd been sleeping in his rusted Saturn for the past 3 nights, out of gas, out of money, and completely out of options. A job, any job, was a godsend. He ripped the flyer from the window and asked the cashier for directions. Midwood Hollow? The man asked, his voice dipping low. That place still open? I guess so, Vinnie replied. You know it? The man just looked at him a moment, the way people do when they want to say more but don't. Then he shook his head. Just, don't stick your fingers in any cages. By the time Vinnie arrived, the sun was bleeding behind the trees like it was afraid to stay up too late. The zoo sat behind rusted iron gates, vines wrapping around the fencing like fingers. The sign above read Midwood Hollow Wildlife Park and Conservatory, though most of the letters were missing or hanging crooked. He pressed the call button. A screech of static answered. You here for the job? A gravelly voice crackled. Yeah. Vinnie Jenkins. I saw the flyer. Come in. The gates creaked open with a sound like an animal groaning. Vinnie stepped through, his boots crunching over broken gravel and something that might have been bones. The zoo was quiet. Too quiet. No chirping, no howls. Just rows of enclosures cloaked in shadow and silence. A tall, thin man stood in front of the main office wearing a red park uniform 2 sizes too small. He smiled, but it didn't touch his eyes. I'm Mr. Harrow. Welcome to Midwood Hollow, he said, extending a pale hand. You start tonight. Vinnie followed Mr. Harrow into the cramped office. The walls were cluttered with dusty maps of the park, rusting filing cabinets, and shelves of old feed schedules. A single security monitor glowed in the corner, split into 12 flickering feeds, half of them static. Mr. Harrow pulled out a thin binder and dropped it on the desk. That's the security guide. Not that you'll need it. Vinnie glanced through it, sections labeled feeding protocols, unusual animal behavior, emergency lockdown. Most pages were stained, some torn. A few were missing entirely. You'll do rounds every hour, Harrow said. Start at the primate house, then the reptile dome, over to the aviary, then the carnivore loop. Simple circuit. Don't go off path. Ever. Vinnie's brow furrowed. Off the path? You mean into the enclosures? I mean into the trees. Harrow's face twitched. Don't wander into the forest. It's easy to get lost, especially at night. Sound carries strange out here. With that cryptic advice, Harrow handed him an oversized key ring and a dull flashlight. Bunks are in the staff house, but you won't need them till morning. Stick to the routine, don't touch anything that moves, and if you hear whispering, ignore it. Vinnie raised an eyebrow. Whispering? Harrow gave him a long look. Just animals. Some mimic voices. Don't respond. It encourages them. Vinnie didn't know whether to laugh or ask for clarification, but Harrow was already disappearing down the corridor. At 11 p.m., he stepped into the cool night, the zoo bathed in unnatural stillness. The trees swayed gently in the wind, their silhouettes shifting like tall figures in the dark. His flashlight flickered as he passed the empty ticket booth. A breeze carried the faint scent of decay. The first stop was the primate house. The building was a squat concrete block, windows fogged over, door unlocked. Inside, the air was thick and sour. Rows of metal cages lined the walls. Most were empty, save for one. A hunched form sat in the shadows of the far enclosure. Vinnie raised his light. A chimpanzee stared back at him. But there was something wrong. Its eyes didn't move like an animal's. They didn't dart. They stared, focused, fixed. Watching him the way a person might watch a stranger through a peephole. Its lips peeled back, not in a snarl, but a smile. "Hey, Vinny muttered, checking the enclosure tag. Subject number 019, Bico. You okay in there, buddy?" Then it spoke. "Turn around." The voice was hoarse. Human. Like a recording whispered through gravel. Vinny froze. "What did you just—" "Turn around," it said again. Something scraped behind him. Vinny spun around, heart in his throat, flashlight beam jittering against the moldy walls. Nothing was there. Just rows of empty cages and old straw bedding. But he could hear it. Something, breathing. Heavy, wet, and close. He swept the light across the floor. Dust rose in plumes, but no signs of movement, no footsteps, no animal. Just the strange echo of air being sucked and pushed through some unseen throat. "Okay, not funny," he muttered, backing away. "You guys got some kind of prank protocol in this place?" He turned to look back at Biko's cage. The chimpanzee was no longer at the bars. It stood now. Upright. Tall. Its limbs were wrong, too long, too thin. Its joints bent backwards. Its eyes, still locked on Vinny, were now fully black, without iris or white. Then it smiled wider. And laughed. A shrill, garbled noise like a child imitating laughter after hearing it for the first time. Mechanical. Inhuman. Vinny stumbled backward, nearly tripping over a mop bucket, and rushed for the door. It slammed shut before he could reach it. He lunged for the handle, twisting, yanking, locked. His flashlight flickered and died. Darkness swallowed the room. Silence followed. Then a whisper. But not from Biko's cage. From all around. Hundreds of voices, overlapping. "You shouldn't be here. They never leave. We remember." Vinny screamed and slammed his fist against the door. "Open up. Hey. Harrow. Anyone." With a shriek of rusted hinges, the door flung inward. Light from the walkway outside poured in. Harrow stood there, holding a ring of keys and a half-smoked cigarette. "Didn't I say?" he muttered. "Don't talk to them." Vinny stumbled out, chest heaving. "That thing talked to me." It stood up. "What the hell is in there?" Harrow didn't look at him. Just relit his cigarette and stared into the primate house. "Most of them aren't really animals anymore," he said, voice low. "Not after what happened in '94. Vinny blinked. What did happen in '94? But Harrow only turned away. "Finish your patrol." Vinny stared after him, mouth dry, hands trembling. Then, gripping the cold metal of his flashlight, he headed toward the reptile dome, already dreading what he might find next. The path to the reptile dome twisted through the darker part of the zoo, where the trees hung low and heavy, blocking out most of the moonlight. The air felt colder here, the humidity thick like soup clinging to Vinny's skin. His flashlight beam caught glimpses of cracked signs and faded murals painted on brick walls, cartoon snakes, happy lizards, long-forgotten attempts to make this place family-friendly. He arrived at a small building shaped like a geodesic dome, its panels fogged with grime. Vines had clawed their way up the structure, some even breaking through the seams. He pushed open the door and was immediately hit with the stench of mildew and rot. The temperature inside was sweltering. It felt alive, like the whole place was breathing through its mossy vents. Rows of terrariums lined the walls. Most were empty. A few were shattered. One in particular drew his attention. It was labeled. Subject number 044, Naga, do not disturb. Inside was a nest of half-submerged stones and tangled roots. No heat lamp. No signs of life. Vinny leaned closer, wiping the glass with his sleeve. His breath fogged the panel. "Hello?" he whispered. Something moved. Not in the terrarium, in the reflection. Behind him, slithering just out of reach of the flashlight beam, a dark shape moved across the ceiling. Silent. Smooth. He spun around and aimed the beam upward. Nothing. Then the faint hiss. Vinny. He stiffened. No one had said his name since he arrived. Not out loud. Not until now. He backed toward the door slowly, his breath catching in his throat. That's when he noticed a smear of blood on the floor leading from the terrarium toward the maintenance corridor. He hesitated. He knew he should leave. He knew it. But something pulled at him, curiosity? Guilt? Or maybe the whisper that now echoed in his ears like wind through a tunnel. Down here. He crept into the corridor, following the trail of red, heart pounding with every step. The walls closed in, and the overhead lights flickered, some dead completely. He passed old cages built into the stone, small ones, far too small for animals. Shackles bolted to the floors. What the hell, Vinny murmured. Then something dropped behind him with a thud. Heavy. Wet. He turned slowly. A face met his. Gray. Scaled. Too long. Eyes like polished stones. And a mouth too wide filled with too many teeth. The creature grinned. Cold-blooded, it whispered. Vinny bolted. He didn't stop running until he was back outside, gasping under the stars, his skin clammy with fear. He didn't know what he'd just seen. But whatever it wasn't a snake. Not anymore. The gravel crunched beneath Vinny's boots as he staggered toward the aviary, limbs trembling, mind racing. He didn't even try to rationalize what he'd seen. This place was wrong, rotted, like something dead pretending to still be alive. The aviary stood like a collapsed greenhouse, its steel ribs bent and broken in places, the mesh netting hanging in shreds. The sign was faded but legible. Midwood Hollow Flight Sanctuary. See the world on wings. He approached the entrance slowly. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of feathers, ammonia, and something else, something sweet and sour, like spoiled fruit. As he stepped in, his boots sank into a mushy floor covered in old straw and bird droppings. The entire habitat was overgrown with vines and filled with eerie silence. No flapping wings. No chirping. No movement. His flashlight flicked across the enclosure. Dozens of perches, nests, and high wires stretched above, but nothing occupied them. Then a feather drifted down from the ceiling. Vinny froze. Another. And another. They fell like snow, silently. He looked up. His light hit something clinging to the rafters. At first, it looked like a vulture. Huge. Wings wrapped around its body like a cloak. But then it unfolded, arms and legs stretching unnaturally long. Its wings shimmered, patchy and translucent like flesh stretched over bone. It dropped silently to the ground, landing like a spider. Welcome, it croaked in a distorted, gravelly voice. Gray. Scaled. Too long. Eyes like polished stones. And a mouth too wide filled with too many teeth. The creature grinned. Cold-blooded, it whispered. Vinny bolted. He didn't stop running until he was back outside, gasping under the stars, his skin clammy with fear. He didn't know what he'd just seen. But whatever it wasn't a snake. Not anymore. The gravel crunched beneath Vinny's boots as he staggered toward the aviary, limbs trembling, mind racing. He didn't even try to rationalize what he'd seen. This place was wrong, rotted, like something dead pretending to still be alive. The aviary stood like a collapsed greenhouse, its steel ribs bent and broken in places, the mesh netting hanging in shreds. The sign was faded but legible. Midwood Hollow Flight Sanctuary. See the world on wings. He approached the entrance slowly. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of feathers, ammonia, and something else, something sweet and sour, like spoiled fruit. As he stepped in, his boots sank into a mushy floor covered in old straw and bird droppings. The entire habitat was overgrown with vines and filled with eerie silence. No flapping wings. No chirping. No movement. His flashlight flicked across the enclosure. Dozens of perches, nests, and high wires stretched above, but nothing occupied them. Then a feather drifted down from the ceiling. Then he froze. Another. And another. They fell like snow, silently. He looked up. His light hit something clinging to the rafters. At first, it looked like a vulture. Huge. Wings wrapped around its body like a cloak. But then it unfolded, arms and legs stretching unnaturally long. Its wings shimmered, patchy and translucent like flesh stretched over bone. It dropped silently to the ground, landing like a spider. "Welcome," it croaked in a distorted, gravelly voice. Vinny backed away, unable to speak. More creatures emerged from the shadows, once birds, now mutations. Owls with too many eyes. A peacock whose fan of feathers was made of writhing, blinking eyelids. A crane with a woman's jaw hanging beneath its beak. Another keeper, the tall one whispered, tilting its head. "You stay longer than the last one." "That's good." I'm just security," Vinny managed to choke out. "Oh," said the creature, smile widening. "So were we." Then, from every corner of the dome, a sound rose, a flap, a hum, a chant of voices too warped to understand. Vinny turned and bolted, knocking over a crate of rotting eggs. One cracked, revealing not a chick, but something slick and humanoid inside, its eyes already open, watching him. He didn't look back. Outside, the wind had picked up. Leaves rustled in a circular motion, and the aviary behind him groaned like a dying whale. He paused at the trail's edge, panting, hunched over. That's when he noticed the sign half buried in the soil beside him. "Employees only beyond this point, the hollow path." The arrow pointed toward the woods. But Harrow's warning echoed in his head. "Don't go into the trees." Vinny swallowed hard and turned instead toward the final stretch of his patrol, the carnivore loop. His flashlight flickered again. And this time, it didn't come back on. Vinny walked the edge of the carnivore loop in near-complete darkness, the trees above swallowing what little moonlight remained. His flashlight had died minutes ago, the bulb making a soft popping sound before dimming forever. He could only navigate by the rusty path markers embedded in the ground, each barely visible under the moss and decay. Cages loomed on either side of the trail. Most were empty, their gates rusted open. Others had movement in them, slow, deliberate, the kind that comes from something watching you instead of just wandering. A sign creaked as he passed. "Predator Pavilion, observe the grates." Lions, wolves, panthers, and more. He stopped outside a large enclosure surrounded by reinforced glass panels, most of which were stained dark or completely fogged over. He leaned closer, trying to peer in. A single phrase was etched into the condensation from the inside. "Help US." He blinked, heart thudding. Then something smacked the glass from within. Hard. He fell back onto the gravel, scrambling up just in time to see a smear of crimson drag down the glass. Clawed fingers, human-shaped, trailed down the panel before vanishing into the mist. "Nope. No," Vinny muttered, staggering to his feet and moving on. Every enclosure he passed whispered a different horror. One had pacing shadows and soft growling, but no visible animals. Another was filled with bones, some unmistakably human. Then came the worst. The final exhibit. A black cage with no glass, no plaque. Just bars, and darkness. He almost passed it until he heard the breathing. Deep. Ragged. Wet. Then, footsteps. Coming from inside the cage. A shape emerged, tall, covered in matted fur, but upright. Its face was half mask, half muzzle. Its hands were claws, but too long, too human. It clutched something in its fingers. A red uniform hat. Vinny's eyes widened. It was the same hat Harrow wore. Then the creature spoke. In Harrow's voice. "Finish your patrol, Vinny." Vinny stumbled backward, his scream caught in his throat. The creature smiled, lips cracking open like paper, revealing rows of broken human teeth. Then it lunged at the bars. Metal groaned. Vinny sprinted. He didn't stop until he reached the park's center plaza, an overgrown circle with a rusted carousel and toppled popcorn stand. He collapsed on a bench, gasping for air. Somewhere deep in the zoo, a chorus of howls rose. Not wolves. Not lions. Something else. Something angry. And hungry. He finally whispered aloud, "What is this place?" A voice answered from behind him, low and guttural. "You're part of the exhibit now." Vinny spun around, heart hammering. No one was there. Only the carousel creaked in the wind, its painted animals warped with time, horses with broken legs, a zebra whose face had melted from sun and rain, and something in the back that looked suspiciously like a skinned baboon. But no person. He stood slowly, body trembling, and turned toward the staff office. He needed answers. Needed Harrow. Or maybe just a working phone, or keys, or anything that made sense. But halfway down the path, something stopped him. The trees had shifted. The trail he'd come from, the carnivore loop, was gone. Swallowed by the forest. And in its place was the path he'd been warned about. The one with the old, rotted sign. The hollow path. Vinny's breath caught. He stepped back. The wind blew harder now, and something howled, not far off. Something close. He heard claws scraping pavement. Then, a whisper from the trees. "Finish the circuit, Vinny." It was Harrow's voice again. But distorted. Faint. Unnatural. He turned to run back to the plaza, but it, too, was gone. Just trees. Endless. Tight. Pressing in. The forest had moved. Rearranged itself like a living thing. He was trapped. So, against every instinct, Vinny stepped onto the hollow path. The soil beneath his feet squished. Roots curled above the ground like snakes. The trees leaned in, narrowing the trail to a single file space. Overhead, the canopy blocked the moon entirely. He passed stone statues, once perhaps animals, now abstract, twisted things. One had too many heads. Another had wings made of hands. The deeper he walked, the more the forest began to breathe. And then, a sound. Click. 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 Vinny froze. A shape emerged in the distance, a tall, pale figure walking backward, head bent at an unnatural angle, hands clasped behind its back. Each step was punctuated by the rhythmic click of its claws against stone. Then it spoke. Not aloud, but inside his skull. "This is not your zoo. It is ours." It twisted suddenly, facing him fully, eyes like empty sockets leaking smoke. Then he turned and ran. Branches whipped his face, roots grabbed at his ankles, shadows shifted ahead of him like barriers forming mid-step. He screamed. The sound was swallowed. And then, light. Dim and artificial. The forest thinned just enough to reveal a structure, a long-abandoned zookeeper's hut. It looked like it hadn't been touched in decades. Covered in vines. Half the roof gone. But it was shelter. He didn't think. He ran inside and slammed the door behind him. Then froze. Because someone was already there. A man, back turned, staring at a corkboard filled with photos. Photos of Vinny. Every step of his patrol. Every cage. Every reaction. Each image stamped with a timecode. The man turned. It was Harrow. But his skin was sagging, face stretched thin, as if something else wore him like a costume. "Welcome to the hollow," he said softly. "Shift's not over yet." Vinny stared at Harrow, or the thing that looked like him, unable to breathe. The figure smiled with teeth too white, too perfect. It stepped aside from the corkboard, revealing a battered metal desk beneath, its surface cluttered with papers, Polaroids, and a large leather-bound journal. "I kept notes," it said in Harrow's voice, though it no longer tried to mimic his face. It was melting now, the disguise peeling away like paint soaked in acid. "What, are you?" Vinny whispered. The thing paused, as though genuinely considering the question. "We are memory," it said. "Remnants. Left behind after they tried to shut us down. The animals. The keepers. The failures. We didn't forget." Vinny stepped cautiously toward the desk, eyes scanning the mess. The journal was open to a page marked with a red claw print. The entry was dated July 9, 1994. "We shouldn't have built the new section. The hollow path was never part of the original design. Something was buried beneath it. Something old. We unearthed it, thinking it was just another enclosure, but it opened the earth instead. Opened us. Asterisk. Another entry. The ringing came from the front desk. A black rotary phone, covered in cobwebs, spinning its sound into the stale air. Vinny stared at it, unsure what scared him more, answering it, or letting it keep ringing. He picked up the receiver. "Hello?" he whispered. Static. Then a voice, broken, glitching like an old recording. "You're not supposed to be here." Vinny's blood ran cold. "Who is this?" "They won't let you leave. Not unless you finish the circuit. Not unless you see what they saw." "What? What who saw?" "You must go beneath." The line went dead with a soft click. Vinny set the receiver down slowly. Then, a loud buzz came from behind the desk, a mechanical sound, deep below the floorboards. A hidden elevator. A wall panel nearby slid open with a groan of metal and dust. Inside, a rusted freight lift stood, its single bulb flickering like a heartbeat. Carved into the floor in front of it were the words, "Last exhibit, staff only." Vinny didn't want to go down. Every fiber of his being screamed at him not to. But the forest wouldn't let him go back. And whatever this zoo was, whatever it housed, it had chosen him. He stepped inside. The door slid shut. The elevator lurched downward. No buttons. No floor numbers. Just darkness. He stood alone as it creaked lower and lower, the air getting colder with each descent. It felt like falling into a grave. A soft voice began to hum through the speaker above. A lullaby. A child's voice. All the cages locked at night. None escape and none take flight. The elevator stopped. And the doors opened into blackness. He stepped forward. And the walls breathed. The hallway was wet. Not with water, but with something thicker. The walls glistened, covered in a membrane that pulsed ever so slightly, like veins wrapped around concrete. The air was humid and coppery, and each step Vinny took made a soft squelch beneath his boots. Dim lights flickered along the corridor, buzzing like insects trapped behind glass. He tried not to touch the walls. Tried not to look too long at them. But they seemed alive. Watching. Shifting. This place wasn't part of any normal zoo. It was something beneath, forgotten, or maybe buried on purpose. A sign jutted from the slime-covered wall. Exhibit, Human Habituation, Observation Deck 01. Vinny moved forward. The corridor opened into a large chamber lined with cracked one-way glass windows. On the other side of the glass were rooms, white, sterile, padded. Observation cells. Inside them? People. At least, they used to be. Some sat motionless, staring blankly into the mirrors. Others paced in slow, jerky movements, their heads twitching with every step. Their features were off. Stretched. Melted in places. Too symmetrical in others. One of them looked exactly like Vinny. Same clothes. Same face. It turned and looked directly at him. Vinny backed away from the glass. A loudspeaker crackled overhead, and a distorted voice rang out, calm, clinical. Specimen replication nearing completion. Subject memory imprint stable. Testing phase initiated. The lights in the cells went out. A red emergency glow bathed the chamber. One by one, the mirrored windows began to crack. Then he ran. He tore through the hall, past more signs. Primate human splicing trial. Mimicry pen, phase 3. Feeding lab, do not enter alone. The walls began screaming. Hundreds of voices, some pleading, others mocking. Then, a door. Marked in thick white paint. Exit to surface, zookeeper access only. He slammed his shoulder into it. Locked. A terminal blinked beside the door. Old. CRT screen. Zookeeper ID required. Then he looked down at his security badge. It wasn't enough. Suddenly, a hand reached from the darkness behind him, bony, cold, grabbing his shoulder. He turned, ready to fight. It was a woman in a faded red uniform, half her face wrapped in gauze, eyes filled with sorrow. She pressed something into his palm. A laminated badge. Zookeeper, H. Harrow. I never got out, she whispered. Maybe you can. She faded, literally melted, into the floor. Then he didn't think. He swiped the card. The door unlocked with a heavy clang. He ran up the stairs, taking them two at a time, the screams of the not-quite-human echoing behind him. As he burst through the final door, fresh air hit him like a wave. The zoo was still. Quiet. Morning light was just beginning to creep over the trees. Vinny stood in the entry plaza, back where he'd started. But the gate was still locked. And the sign on the wall had changed. Where once it read, "Welcome to Midwood Hollow Zoo," it now read, "Thank you for joining our exhibit." And beneath it, in fresh black paint, cage number 077, Vincent Jenkins, observation ongoing. Vinny stumbled backward from the sign, eyes locked on the letters as if staring longer would make them change. They didn't. The paint was fresh. Wet. Dripping down the warped wood and oily rivulets. He touched his chest. His heart still pounded. His hands were trembling. But the air, it smelled normal. Like wet soil and morning dew. The howls were gone. The whispers. The screams. He turned slowly. The zoo grounds behind him looked different, cleaner. The buildings, while old, weren't collapsing. The glass enclosure sparkled in the dawn light. No blood. No vines. No wrongness. A calm voice came over the loudspeaker, soft and friendly. Good morning, guests. Midwood Hollow is now open. We hope you enjoy your visit. Vinny stared at the intercom speaker mounted to the ticket booth. His fingers brushed the gate. Still locked. He looked around. No cars in the lot. No people on the paths. But something moved in the corner of his eye. He turned toward the primate house. Inside the far window, something familiar. Him. Standing there. In the same security jacket, same jeans. Same tired face. But different eyes. Colder. And smiling. Vinny stumbled back. No, 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 no. The loudspeaker crackled again. Security to the entrance gate. Please assist our new guest. Subject number 077 has completed initial integration. He pounded on the gate now. Let me out. You said I could leave. The air answered him with silence. Then, footsteps. From every path. Figures emerging from behind enclosures and buildings. Dozens of them. All in security uniforms. All bearing the same hollow smile. Some had missing eyes. Some walked with broken limbs that didn't seem to bother them. One by one, they stopped and watched. Then he turned and ran, not down the patrol path, not toward the staff building, but into the forest. The trees had rearranged again. The hollow path gone. Instead, a new trail opened for him. Straight. Winding deeper. He didn't care anymore. Anywhere but here. He ran until his legs gave out, collapsing near an old wooden sign swallowed by moss. He wiped it clean with a trembling hand. It read, "Property of Midwood Hollow Zoological Research Division. Experimental Zone 2, mirror subjects." Beneath it, a plaque. "You are the animal. We are the cage." Vinny wept. For himself. For whoever he used to be. For whoever, whatever, was now wearing his face back at the zoo. And as he lay in the dirt, the trees slowly began to close again, sealing him inside the forest. A new voice echoed in his head. This one his own. Morning shift starts now. When Vinny opened his eyes again, the forest was quiet, too quiet. No chirping birds. No rustling leaves. Only the soft thud of his heartbeat, heavy in his ears. He sat up slowly. The sign was gone. So was the trail. In its place, dense trees packed tight, as if they'd never moved at all. The only light filtered through a grayish mist now curling around the roots, thickening like breath from unseen mouths. He tried to call out, his voice cracked. Hello? No echo. No answer. He checked his watch, but it had stopped. 3:33 a.m., frozen, the second hand twitching erratically in place. Something cold brushed his neck. He swatted at it, but his hand passed through air. No, not air. A ripple. Like disturbed water. And then, he felt it. The shift. Like the entire forest bent slightly sideways. A chime rang out from nowhere, soft, metallic, like the bell at a reptile house door. Subject number 078. Awake. His breath caught in his throat. Integration pending. Observe. Assess. Replace. He spun, stumbling backward as shapes began to form in the fog. Figures. 1, 2, 3 of them. Their skin pale as stone. Limbs too long. Mouth stitched shut with wire. Each one had the same sunken eyes, and in each left eye socket, tiny, swirling camera lenses. Stay back, Vinny hissed, raising a branch. They didn't flinch. They just recorded. One of them tilted its head at an unnatural angle, its neck snapping slightly. From behind it, a fourth figure emerged, smaller, hunched. And wearing his old zoo badge. His name, Vincent Marrow. Printed in bold. Below it, subject number 078, candidate. Vinny shook his head. No. That's not, I'm not. The figure held the badge out toward him. A mirror shimmered into view behind it, floating in midair like a curtain of mercury. And in the mirror, Vinny saw himself. But not as he was. Not tired. Not afraid. He looked strong. Alert. Different. Until the reflection smiled, and winked. Then it stepped through the mirror. Vinny froze. The others bowed their heads. The new Vinny adjusted his zoo jacket, brushed the leaves from his pants, and walked toward him. Time to go home, the double whispered. Vinny turned to run. But the path behind him was gone. He was surrounded by glass walls now. Cold. Seamless. He reached out and pressed his hand to the invisible surface, a viewing pane. From the outside, he saw them. People. Visitors. Smiling. Holding maps. Children pointing. Looking in at him. Reading a new plaque. Subject number 078, The Imitation. Recovered in Midwood Hollow. Exhibits mimicry and memory. Do not tap the glass. He pounded on the glass. Let me out. But all they saw was a creature. Tilting its head. Mimicking human movement. Observing. Smiling. Vinny screamed until his throat ached, but his voice came out garbled, like static over a broken speaker. He slammed his fists against the invisible barrier, but it didn't even tremble. The families on the other side didn't react, didn't see him as a man begging for help. They saw an exhibit. One child tilted her head and mimicked Vinny's motion, giggling. "Look, Mommy! It's copying me!" Vinny stumbled back, horror washing over him. From the other side, a zookeeper appeared, wearing a uniform not unlike his own, but darker, sleeker. No name tag. Just a black patch with a symbol that resembled a fractured spiral. The zookeeper pressed a button on a control panel beside the glass. A low hum filled the space. Then the walls flickered and vanished. The illusion of the exhibit dissipated like smoke, revealing metal floors, damp stone walls, and ceiling vents that hissed softly. The other Vinny stood calmly in the corner, arms crossed, grinning. "Don't fight it," he said. His voice sounded exactly like Vinny's, but deeper, more assured. "You're the old version. Outdated." Vinny backed away. "What is this place?" The double smile widened. A ceiling hatch opened with a hiss. And something dropped through it. Meat. Raw. Wet. Reeking. It slapped against the floor in a heap of red and black sinew. Before Vinny could move, another hatch opened in the wall, and something slid through, on all fours. Eyes milky. Skin hairless and stretched tight. It sniffed the air once. Then its gaze locked on Vinny. "Feeding hour," the other Vinny whispered. Vinny dodged, sliding on the slick floor as claws raked past his cheek. It let out a breathy hiss, like air escaping a tire, and charged again. He grabbed the lump of meat and hurled it into the far corner. The thing turned, following it. And Vinny ran. A door appeared in the far wall, suddenly, as if it had always been there. He didn't care if it was another trap. He threw his weight into it and fell through. The door slammed shut behind him. Darkness swallowed the hallway ahead. A green light flickered above a sign. Subject transfer in progress. Remain still. But Vinny couldn't stop shaking. He was part of something larger. Something built beneath the zoo. Something with layers, systems, rules. And he was now just one of many. He stared at his reflection in a panel of stainless steel. His skin had started to pale. His eyes shimmered faintly under the flickering light,